the start of the 5th century, the Roman army began to gradually withdraw from England because their troops were needed to defend the heart of the empire against barbarian attacks. In 410 AD, some citizens wrote a desperate letter to the Roman Emperor Honorius, begging for more troops and protection. But Honorius had no troops to send, and England was effectively abandoned. So, it's 410 AD, and what do the Romans do? They just zoom out of England, because, oh, sorry, I left the oven on or something back in Rome. So they're out of it, and 410 AD, England's just open for invasion. 5 tribes are there going, oh, I think I'll have a bit of England, and they come steaming in. And these main tribes are called the Geats and the Jutes and the Angles and the Frisians and the Saxons, generally known as the Anglo-Saxons, but I prefer to call them the gangly, frangly-jangly Saxons. They're from about up here down to about here, and then they steam across here, and they end up in England in the north, sort of Humberside area, all the way down to Kent in the south of England. By 600 AD, half of England is under their rule. Now, these tribes, the Anglo-Saxons, or the Jangly Saxons, or whatever name we call them, this disguises the fact that they really are German tribes, or Germanic tribes. And these Germans really leave their mark on England. They give us one thing that above all we think of as being the epitome of being English, and that is the English language itself. Which means that as the Anglo-Saxons started it, English is really a kind of German. Before the tribes invaded, we spoke Celtic dialects, known as Brittonic languages. Then the Anglo-Saxon tribes arrived speaking Germanic dialects. These gradually combined and became our first national language. This language is called Anglo-Saxon, or Old English. It is the core of the language we speak today. We use its pronunciation, word order, and vocabulary in every modern English sentence.
Essentially, the core of modern English vocabulary is directly descended from Old English. 30, 40, and even more % of modern English vocabulary is effectively Old English.
30, 40%. Is this in certain areas particularly, more than others, or?
All of the common things, with verbs of action like to tread, tredan, Old English, to go, gan, Old English, arizan, they'd get to get up.
Okay. Shave,
they'd drink and they'd etan, so they'd drink and they'd eat. Basic family relationships, parts of the body, eye, ear, mouth, and nothing fancy like appendix, because that's not tonsils, that's not going to have existed in Old English. Okay, well if I read you a very short snippet of an Old English poem, 10th century, it's called The Dream of the Rood, and this is just a couple of lines of it, which I thought exemplify or show how similar Old English is to modern English.
Let's see if I can understand that.
Do. So, thuchte me that each sour silitra trail.
The first 2 words, I think, can't be said on Discovery Channel.
Right, okay. Make him move.
The first one boxed me. It turns out thuchte me actually means thought me, or I thought, not
but with the old
the other one.
Letter.
But generally, Old English and Modern English have a lot in common. But I do get the sense that if I said me and my wife-man here on horse, and we will eat in the house and then swim in the night and day and with the king, that kind of stuff is pretty similar between Old English and Modern English. Whereas if I say I was texting in my car with the astrophysics professor who brought me a ham sandwich from the shops, and that all goes wrong. So it's all good. In fact, they're so similar that with just a brief lesson, I can have a conversation in Old English, and not just with other English people. As it's a Germanic language, I should be able to use it to communicate with people who speak other Germanic languages. Logically, if I learn some phrases from you, work out some lines, put them together, in Old English, I should be able to go to a land which still is using a Germanic language and have a vague conversation. I don't know, go to a farm and try and buy a cow or something like that.
What kind of cow do you want? Do you want
a real Rolls Royce of a cow, you know, real sort of all the adders in working order?
The first thing you have to say is I would like to buy. Old English, willan is want, or I desire.
Really?
Okay.
Wij zijn.
Because
Wij
the
gaan.
Budjan.
Budjan.
The origin of the word to buy. Okay, so
Ik wil budjan aan een brune koe.
so if you want to buy a cow that
Is full of meaty milk.
well, that makes milk.
That makes milk.
That makes milk. Maka,
Maka.
meeltje.
Meeltje.
Milk. Meeltje.
Meeltje.
Yeah. And if you need to get his attention, you just shout at him either what, meaning listen, low, or
What?
ela, ela.
Right.
Yeah.
Accent-wise, of course, it's very. I know it's impossible to really tell what they sound like.
There's no point looking at modern English accents to give us a clue to Old English because it's a Germanic language. It's more likely, certainly in its earliest kind of days, to sound Dutch-ish.
But I think I've watched Dutch people on MTV who go, "It's fantastic, and now this new band, it's crazy new band coming on here in Amsterdam. It's fantastic," and I'm going to go for that kind of accent, which I picked up when I was watching MTV in Holland.